Let's go.
Let's go. Oh, no.
Do you want to?
Sorry. I'll let you.
Next one.
I'm excited and I feel relaxed and I'm ready to party. Don't say sorry. You don't need to do that. You don't need to apologize. It's a fucked up female habit. You don't need to be sorry for anything ever.
Can you guess what every woman's worst nightmare is?
I don't have rage issues!
I have nothing to prove to you. When I'm good, I'm very good. But when I'm bad, I'm better.
I say when it comes to stardom and Lauren, there are no accidents.
Hi, Karen Peterson.
Hello, and welcome to Citizen Dame, the podcast where marriage is what brings us together today. Love. Whoa, love. I'm Karen Peterson, joined as always by Lauren Humphreys Brooks.
It's Peter Cook too. Like I was watching it. I was just like, wait a minute. I is that Peter Cook? Because like now as an adult, I was like, wow, that's Peter Cook. Yeah. Hi.
Hi. Yeah. So many fun things. So we today, of course, are talking about the 1987 classic, The Princess Bride. But before we get to that, how are you, Lauren?
I'm quite good. Yeah, it's finally nice here in New York, although today it's rainy and we are now into it's going to rain and be hot at the same time, so it's the least pleasant kind of spring weather. But it was lovely yesterday and I went to go see Sinners, which was great. Really liked that. My new rule apparently about going to see movies in the movie theater is that they must be vampire movies. I think not all, but most of the more recent films that I've seen in theaters have been vampire films.
Well, I guess it's a good thing that there's a lot of vampire films coming. So
really good ones too. Like
Yeah.
Sinners. Sinners was fantastic. I really recommend it to everybody. I want to see it again to kind of, now that I know what the story is, I want to sort of, pull out some of the myths that they're working with and like all of the different things that are going on in that film. It's very well done.
Yeah, I saw it last week and I loved it. It's great. I was doing it for my other podcast, and so I just kind of had to go to whatever showing I could. But I really want to go back and see it in IMAX because this is the first film from a female cinematographer shot entirely in IMAX.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
It's a gorgeously shot film.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
And well, I think it would be really good in IMAX as well because the music is so immersive and the way that the camera moves is so like there's a lot of long dolly shots and like moving in and out of space, and I think it would be really amazing to see that on a much bigger screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that you liked it. I'm not surprised that you liked it, but I'm glad that you went and saw it and that you enjoyed it. So
I went in and a couple of Black friends of mine had also recommended it, and I was like, okay, that's like raising it up in my estimation as well. So yeah, I really liked it. It's something that I want to spend more time with, to be honest. And it's again dealing with vampires, which is apparently the thing that I love. So
my co-host on my other podcast, Derek, he started off, he's like, vampires are back, and I was just like, what? Where did they go?
I mean, we've had within a couple of months of each other, because we had Nosferatu and now this, and I mean, both of them explore completely different kind of veins of like depiction of vampires and vampires as metaphors, and very complex metaphors too. It's not one-to-one allegories either, in like different ways, which I really like. It's kind of moving outside of I think that vampires had been lost in some ways because they'd sort of become parodies of themselves. Yeah. And that's why films like What We Do in the Shadows and shows like What We Do in the Shadows work so well, is because like more serious vampire stories had just become kind of schlocky. And now we've got these more serious ones that are actually exploring vampires in an interesting way and are kind of moving away from that schlockiness and going back to a lot of kind of the mythological and religious origins of vampires and the vampire narrative beyond even like Bram Stoker, going back to other traditions, which I quite like.
Well, Derek will be glad to know you agree with him. Oh, all right. Well, this week, as I mentioned, we are talking about The Princess Bride. So we're still in 1987, still in 1987 romance movies. The Princess Bride is such an interesting thing because it kind of blends some genres together, and it's very much a storybook. And it is based on, so Rob Reiner is the director. William Goldman wrote the script, but he adapted it from his own book, The Princess Bride. And it's about the, well, what it's really about is a grandfather reading a story to his grandson, but what we experience through most of the movie is that story. And it's just got such an incredible cast. Cary Elwes, Mandy Patinkin, Robin Wright, Chris Sarandon, Christopher Guest, Wallace Shawn, Andre the Giant, Fred Savage, Peter Falk, Peter Cook, Mel Smith, Carol Kane, Billy Crystal. I'm probably missing people. Just such an incredible cast. And of course, a lot of these people had worked with Rob Reiner in various capacities before. So it's no surprise that they would sign on to work with him on this. But it's such an imaginative movie because it does go back and forth between this sort of present day 1987 real life bedroom with this kid who's homesick from school, and his mom gets grandpa to come over and read him a story. And so grandpa comes over, and grandpa is Peter Falk, and he's sharing with his grandson a story that meant a lot to him as a kid. And it's the story of the Princess Bride. And there's swashbuckling and sword fighting and kidnappings and also, and like two countries that are on the brink that people are trying to stir up a war. So there's just lots of things happening in this fairy tale world. And it's just so fun to go back and forth between the two. I have the Criterion disc, so I was watching that. And so I listened to the part of the commentary and got some really fun insights into the movie, that just things that I never knew about before. And also just things that I hadn't really thought much about before. Like one of the things that Rob Reiner talks about is how they actually early on had the discussion of, do we just make the story of the Princess Bride, or do we need this grandfather and this grandson? And ultimately they decided that they did need that because it grounds the whole movie and it really establishes that you're watching a fairy tale. They're not at any time trying to promote that this is sort of a real world and a real story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really liked that about, like, watching this now as an adult, and I like that about the framing narrative because it also it allows for some of the silliness that is inherent within the story, like the cliffs of insanity and the pit of despair and all of that. It's all very, if it was taken more serious, like it's taken seriously, but if it was treated as like a more serious story, it would be silly, right? It would shift over too much, basically. But the fact that they established this as like, this is a story that a grandfather, like, you are being put into a fairy tale world through this book. And so you expect all of those things in a fairy tale world. You've got all of these different fairy tale rules and the rule of three, rodents of unusual size, all of those kinds of things. You can kind of see where each of the beats lands. But it works because you have this framing narrative of this grandfather telling the story to his grandson. And it also means that the film gets to elide over certain things. Mm-hmm. Because the grandfather will like interrupt and be like, oh, you don't want to hear about this. This is romance. It's gross. Or he'll be like, we're going to skip over this bit.
This is too scary. Let's just keep going.
Yeah. And so it allows the film to kind of play a little bit more, while still being very well constructed, it allows it to kind of play fast and loose for certain things. So you really, honestly, you get to the good bits. You get to the fun stuff. You get to the stuff like, all right, we're not going to have a whole setup about, the geopolitical situation in this world. It's just like, this is a fairy tale about a farm boy who goes to sea to make his fortune, and like a woman who gets entrapped into this marriage to this prince, and there's kidnapping and swordplay. Like all of it is just so set in this obviously kind of mythological world that you can accept most of what's happening. It all fits into the genre really well.
Yeah. I read the book a long time ago, probably 20 years ago. And so I don't remember the details of the differences, but I do know that there's a lot. I remember there's a lot more obviously because you can just get into more things in books than you can usually in movies. But it really gets into the backstories of the, some of all the characters, but especially even like Fezzik and Inigo. It gets into a lot of where they came from and sort of what their lives were like when Vizzini found them, and then other characters too. And but what I do remember just really admiring was how there's so much that they cut out of the book for the movie, and yet both feel so like they're both so good. This isn't a situation where like, oh, the book is better or oh, the movie is better. They're both equally great, really entertaining, really fun stories. And it's like the book just kind of fills in gaps that you just don't have time for in the movie. It's kind of a cool companion piece. I don't know if you've read it.
I haven't. No, I mean, I grew up with the film. It's one of my like childhood. I think I said last week when you were like, "Oh, I didn't even know you'd seen The Princess Bride," and I was like, "Well, I do feel that for like probably for our your generation and mine, it's one of those films that is like constantly in the background of us.
Yeah.
That every like we remember lines from it, we quote lines from inconceivable. That word.
I do not think it means what you think it means.
Yeah, exactly. Like we use that. That's a meme, right?
Yeah.
That's like something that comes up a lot. And I feel like it's one of those films that is just constantly in the background of like both of our generations, basically. And so I never even have thought about it. It's just like, why haven't we done The Princess Bride? Well, because it's just there. It's like always there. Of course it's there. Everybody has seen The Princess Bride, right? And yeah, so I never read the book, but I grew up with the film, and just like I didn't even know it was a book for a long time. And then I thought someone had actually, I remember the first time I saw it in a bookstore, and I thought that someone had like done a novelization of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And then realized that it was the same, like it was William Goldman who's also the screenwriter, and I was like, did he novelize his own play?
Yeah.
And then so it took me a while to actually figure out what the whole process had been, because I was, so this is 1987, I was 1 year old when the film actually came out, so this was just something that was kind of just a part of my life as I got a little bit older and my parents showed me these things.
It's awesome. Yeah, the book is interesting because it does unfold a little bit differently too. It actually starts with Goldman as the writer narrating it and basically telling this story about how he grew up with, I think it was his father reading this book to him, and then when he was older he went back and read it and realized that his dad had cut out all the boring stuff and had only read the good parts. And so this is him abridging the story of The Princess Bride to bring us just the good parts. So it's very clever.
Yeah, like we just said, the film does that as well, like by having this frame narrative, so that you've got the grandfather who's like skipping over bits and cutting things out and being like, oh, it's too scary for you, you're not going to like this part, or this is too romantic.
And can we just, before we go too far into this, can we just talk about adorable baby Fred Savage?
Little tiny fella.
Yeah, before he was out causing trouble. Yeah, no, I love these scenes with Peter Falk and Fred Savage. I think that it's funny, it's cute, and it sets the scene like we're talking about. It kind of establishes the fairy tale side of the story, but it's also just this really sweet relationship between the two. And I really liked, so one of the things that struck me, so at the very end of the movie, obviously we're jumping ahead. At the very end of the movie, after initially protesting that he was going to, be read this story and complaining about it through parts of it, by the end, the grandson, is so excited. He loves the story so much that he asks his grandfather to come back, and maybe read it again tomorrow. And his grandfather says, "As you wish," which is, of course, a throwback to Wesley's line. So Peter Falk and Fred Savage, when they were filming the movie, they only showed up for like 3 days of work, and they were completely separated from everything else that was going on. So they didn't know the movie that they were really making until they saw it at the premiere. And so Peter Falk, at the end of the movie, like he'd recorded that line, "As you wish," and he didn't really understand the impact of it until he's watching it in the theater, and everyone around him is just it's just so, like, they just are so swept up. They loved it so much. And he realized the impact of it. And he was just like, wow, really made a wonderful movie. It's just so sweet, And that's one of the things I love about movie making in general, is like you have all these people that are part of their piece of it, and they don't necessarily get to see the whole thing until it all comes together later.
Yeah, you see how it all kind of fits together, and particularly with something like this where it is a frame narrative, so you wouldn't have, they're not interacting with any of the other actors,
Right.
or they wouldn't have any, unless they were, they may have been given the full script, unless they actually sat down and read the entire script, which a lot of actors don't. Yeah, they wouldn't necessarily know. I love that because it also becomes, because a lot of the film is about love, right?
Yep.
And it's about true love, but it's about different kinds of love as well, because there are friendships, there's familial relationships, there's romantic relationships. And I like that, you get this repetition of that line, "As you wish," which is how, Buttercup first comes to understand that Wesley loves her. But it's in this completely different, context where the grandfather is saying, "I love you" to his grandson. And it's really lovely, and it's a great bookend for the story, because it just reminds us that this is about different kinds of love. This is about people truly loving each other in a multitude of different ways. And I really love that. I also like it. I like it when, it's getting to kind of the climax of the story where our hero has been captured and, oh my God, he's dead. And I like that the grandson then interrupts. It's just like, "You read that wrong. That's not, Wesley can't die. Like, he doesn't die. You read it right." Like, it's that, childhood moment of like, no, he's not allowed to die. That's not how this goes.
Yeah.
And then the grandfather's like, "You know what? I think this is upsetting you a little too much. You're sick." And he's like, no, please finish. He even says like, "No, Humperdinck dies." Like, right? Like, who kills Humperdinck? And then he says like, "Well, Humperdinck doesn't die. Humperdinck survives." Yep. Just like, no, that's not right.
That's all wrong. That's all backwards. It's all wrong.
It really does. I think one of the reasons why it appeals so much to children and then to adults is because it does recall those elements of childhood. It's just like, that's not how the story goes, though. He doesn't die. Like, that can't happen.
The good guy wins, the bad guy dies. That's how it goes.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are the rules.
I remember when my mom read me The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and we got to the part where Aslan dies, and I burst into tears. Like, I was so upset, and my dad actually had to tell me, just like, no, it's a Christ allegory. Like, my father actually told me, "Oh no, this is a Jesus allegory," and he explained to me how this was a Jesus allegory. And basically, what I got from that was Aslan's going to come back. Right? But I was so fucking upset. I was like, no, that's not how it goes. Aslan doesn't die. That's not right. Anyways, yeah, I really like that element of the story. It does, it keeps on reminding you, this is a story that we're being told. We're kind of being put in the position of this little boy sick in bed, listening to his grandfather tell him this fairy tale.
In the Criterion essay by Sloane Crossley, one of the lines in the first paragraph is, "This is a movie in which the central action is Peter Falk reading a book. And it works.
It really does. Peter Falk is so wonderful too. He's like, because he's grandfatherly, but he's got that kind of humor to him. Like it's that combination. It's very I believe in the relationship between these two people, that he's kind of this weird old grandpa, but he's actually the cool old grandpa too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's kind of cheeky, playful. He would be the one that would like let you eat all the junk food and stay up too late when he's watching you. That kind of thing. So
yeah. Exactly.
Okay, so there's so many things to talk about with this movie. It was not commercially successful. I think they ended up making it for around $30 million, but that required Rob Reiner to have to make some very crafty. He had to give up some of his own money, like to secure financing for this. Is what I'm trying to say. And then when they screened it for test audiences, people just loved it. They absolutely loved it. The early scores were very high. And so it was great news, but then the studio didn't really know what to do with it. They didn't know how to market this movie. And so they got it all wrong. So it ended up basically making like 30 million worldwide, which is what its budget was. So it was not considered a success in 1987. Over the years, of course, it has, since done very well in the world of home video and Criterion and all of that, but it was not initially really a successful movie. And it's interesting because that's another thing that that Goldman talks about on the commentary, is basically just this idea that nobody knew. Sorry, hold on. Sorry. Basically just this idea that nobody knew how to market this movie, how to sell it to audiences, what to do with it. Like, what genre do you tell people that this is? Is this a romance? Is it a drama? Is it a period movie? Is it like, what is this? And instead of just focusing on the comedy, which personally I think they should have done, they kind of just botched it. And Goldman even said, it was sold atrociously. Not by evil people. They just didn't know how to sell it. People don't know why movies work or don't work. It's all bullshit. And he's talking about how like there's these variety articles about why this movie doesn't work or why that movie didn't make money. And by the way, this audio commentary was recorded in 1997. So it's 30 years old almost, and still completely relevant today. But yeah, just like, if they had known what they had on their hands, if they had known how to sell this to people, it would have done better, which clearly we know because it did very well once people were watching it at home. They just weren't turning out in theaters for it. So,
it is an odd film because it's funny because it leans so heavily into the genre, into the fairy tale story genre, right? And yet at the same time, it's kind of outside of it. So it doesn't fit easily into, you can't pack it into a specific category. And so often those are the films that are the most successful because they take a genre and they do something interesting with it. Yeah. But as a result, the studio's like, I don't know how to sell this. Like your basic superhero films are easy to sell, really. You know what they are, right? Right. Your basic period dramas, etc. And a lot of the time, the fact is they are basic. Like they're not actually interesting because they're not doing something interesting with the genre. They're sort of just falling into it, and they're fine. They might be enjoyable on the screen, but then it's kind of like, okay, well, there that was. They don't have the staying power of something like The Princess Bride, which doesn't easily fit into any of those categories. Yeah, I mean, the closest I would say that it's a fantasy comedy, I guess, because it is very comedic and it's intended to be comedic. It makes a lot of jokes.
Yes,
it's a kids movie, but it's also not a kids movie because you've got Vietnam jokes in there.
Right. But but even now, like you go to a Pixar film or whatever, there's lots of jokes that are there, even though the movie itself is designed for kids, there's lots of jokes that make it enjoyable for the parents to go and watch it too. And I feel like The Princess Bride kind of falls into that category where it's sort of made as a family movie,
Yeah.
with plenty for the grown-ups to get out of it too, just as much as the kids. So yeah. One of the things too, just with the fairy tale element of it, is it's in some ways it feels like sort of this interesting blend of homaging the old swashbuckler movies.
Yeah.
And also lightly spoofing them too. Like it's not straight up making fun of that genre, those era of movies, but it definitely does have some fun with some of the silliness of those. Like, for example, when Wesley, as the Dread Pirate Roberts, catches up to Inigo and they have their initial sword fight, which is such a great scene. The fencing in that is so good. But there's this like silliness to that entire thing. First of all, they don't want to kill each other, but they're compelled to fight against each other. But then just some of the acrobatics and things, like Inigo throws his sword and then he has to swing on this like thing to get over to where it is, but it's only 3 feet away, and then like all the funny things that they do. It's great.
It's very much a throwback. If you watch some of those older swashbucklers like Captain Blood or the Mark of Zorro, the sort of Basil Rathbone, Tyrone Power, and Errol Flynn kind of films. You definitely, and then you see shades of it in this, even just the way that it's staged. The whole like, oh, I don't want to kill you too quickly. I want to give you a reasonable chance. I'm going to duel you with my left hand, right? And then it turns out that that neither one of them is left-handed. They're both giving each other chances because they're these great swordsmen, things like that. Yeah. And it's very much leaning into those character types, like. Inigo is this this fantastic swordsman who's been training with the sword since he was 11 years old because the 6-figured man murdered his father and he is looking for revenge, right?
And his father made swords.
Yeah. And so it is this like very again sort of mythological, very very tropey backstory, right? We recognize this character, we know this character type is, but he's fleshed out. He's a good character. They do something interesting with him, and we can kind of, the fun of it is that we know he can't die. Like it's just like when like Wesley is quote dead, it's just like he can't be dead. Right. That's not how the story works, right? And so the film does that over and over and over again. You've got the rule of 3. So you've got Vizzini, Fezzik, and Inigo. And then at each stage, Wesley beat the Dread Pirate Roberts, but Wesley, right, beats them at their own games. He beats Inigo with the sword. He beats Fezzik with strength. He beats Vizzini with intellect. And then this comes back later because that's when Inigo realizes that, hey, we need the man in black, right? Who defeated all 3 of us, which means that he's brilliant and he's going to be capable of helping us with what we need to do. So like all of that is this very tropey, like things that we've seen in films, things that we've read in books, that's just a part of the cultural consciousness, and that the film exploits and uses really intelligently without making it into like a Shrek-like parody of it, but treating it with love and respect and humor. Actually, watching The Princess Bride, and I know that like I'm obsessed with Our Flag Means Death, but watching The Princess Bride, I was like, this is kind of the genre that Our Flag Means Death falls into as well.
Yes, yeah.
It's like serious without being serious, using tropes, but using them in an interesting way. Not just subverting them, but like expanding on them in some ways. So we know what the story is, but also, it's a pirate tale, it's a swashbuckler, it's an adventure, but there's also something deeper underneath that. It's not superficial.
Right. Like it's funny. The characters are in funny moments. They say funny things, but they are not trying to be funny. Like for them, they're playing it straight. They're playing it serious. And I think that's why the humor of it works, and why it does feel like, that's why I was trying to say like it's sort of an homage to those old movies. Because it is clearly made by people who love those movies, who grew up on them and who loves them. So yeah.
Doesn't feel, like I said, it doesn't feel satirical or parodic though. Like
Right.
that duel is silly in some ways, right? Like the acrobatics and everything, but it's also funny and it's
Yeah.
also exciting. And I think that some of that is also the skill of the people involved as well. The duel it's a good fight, like it's a well-made duel.
Yes. Yeah.
It's entertaining, it's exciting, it's like we know what the stakes are. It's and we also we like these two characters and we don't want either one of them to die. And then they develop this thing of them liking each other as well. They enjoy each other's they're like, oh, you're brilliant. Like, I'm so glad that I have this. It's that kind of tropiness of having this sword fight where, oh, I respect you so much. It sucks that I have to kill you.
Right. Well, and that's part of why I think it works the way that it does with how it's choreographed, because neither of them wants to kill the other. So it makes sense that they would be, and they both know that they're very good at their craft. So it makes sense that they would kind of be showing off for each other. Definitely not flirting, of course. That has nothing to do with it. But yeah. But yeah, showing off for each other, but not in any sort of rush to actually finish this, because, if they finish it the right way, then one of them is going to die. And neither of them wants to do that. And ultimately, Wesley does win the fight, but he doesn't kill Inigo. He just knocks him out.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to say something else?
No, I was actually just going to say that Wesley ends up being the victor, but it's not even that he's being merciful. It's just that he's like, you're too brilliant. Like, yeah. I like you too much, basically. I don't want to kill you.
Right. And when it comes down to it, Inigo and Fezzik, because we're going to talk about Fezzik in a second, but neither of them is really the bad guy here anyway. They were hired to do a job by Vizzini. He's the one who, first of all, he changed the terms of the deal. They thought they were just kidnapping the princess for whatever reason. It turns out that he was planning on murdering her and to start a war, and they didn't sign up for that. So they're decent people. They're just, doing crimes because they need money.
They're mercenaries.
Yes.
They're mercenaries, but they're not, they have their own reasons for being mercenaries. It's not that they're not bad. And also we get this whole setup where Vizzini is bullying them both. He's being an asshole the entire time. Mm-hmm. He's calling them stupid, he's calling them drunkards, that kind of thing. And so yeah, and we know that the only one that Wesley doesn't even really kill Vizzini. Vizzini kills himself, basically. So the only one out of them who dies is Vizzini, because Vizzini's an asshole.
Because he's an asshole. He deserves it. He was the mastermind behind the whole thing. And like I said, he was planning on actually murdering Buttercup. And also it's his own bravado that gets him killed, because he thinks that he can kind of outsmart his opponent, and it never even occurs to him that Wesley might have come up with another solution for this whole situation. But we'll talk about Vizzini in a second. Let's talk about Fezzik.
All right.
So Andre the Giant, he's so sweet. He's just this big, gigantic man, and so after Wesley defeats Inigo, he keeps going. He comes across Fezzik next, who I love when Vizzini is telling Fezzik to basically kill this guy that's chasing after them. They don't know who it is. And he's just like, do what you do best. And Fezzik's like, what do I do? I don't know. And then Vizzini tells him, get that rock and hit him over the head. And he's just like, that's not very nice. He's like, my thing isn't very nice.
my way isn't very sporting.
Oh, sporting, yeah. Yes. But I love how in both of these encounters with Inigo and with Fezzik, Wesley's talking to them through the whole thing. They're having these sort of, bonding conversations as these people are, sort of half-heartedly trying to complete the job that they've been assigned. And I really like these scenes. What's interesting about the scene with Fezzik and Wesley, well, a couple of things are interesting about it, but Andre the Giant, he had been, I mean, he's such a big, large person. So that comes with some health challenges just by sheer size of his height and everything. But in addition to that, he had been wrestling for years. So he physically just had a lot of injuries. He had a lot of problems, and his back was just destroyed when he was making this movie. And so that entire scene, Wesley, Cary Elwes, is never actually hanging on his back. He looks like he is the entire time, and he never actually is. It's so interesting the way that it's filmed. And so basically when you see those close-up shots where Wesley's hanging on him, he's standing on a platform and he just looks like he is. It's very careful. And then when they pull back and there's these wider shots, it's actually stand-ins and body doubles that they have there. So
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
What are your thoughts about the fight between Fezzik and Wesley?
Well, I really love it. I love how both Inigo and Fezzik are set up as being these really likable characters. Like, and it's not that we feel sorry for them; we just like them. Like, they're nice guys. They're nice people. Fezzik isn't stupid. Like, he's just like, he's treated as stupid by everybody else, and Inigo's the only one who doesn't treat him as though he's stupid. And yeah, I like that camaraderie that develops between the combatants. And it's very clever, and it sets up for what we will get to in kind of the climax of the story, where they all get together again and they're like, okay, if we all kind of pool our resources, right, we can defeat Humperdinck and find the six-fingered man and rescue Buttercup, right? Which is what we need to do. That's what I was saying earlier. It's a really well structured story, because we get all of these bits and pieces and it's all building to something. We're going to get, the characters are going to come back. These conflicts that they're having are going to come back, and they're going to all build to this eventual, conflict, and all of them sort of uniting with each other. It's really well done. I love Andre the Giant. He's so sweet. He's like, yeah, he does a great job with all of this.
Yeah. He really is so sweet. And like, I mean, any character, even with Vizzini, he's nice to them, and he's just, because he's just this giant person, he's part of the Brute Squad, he's treated as this big scary thing. And yet he just has this sweetheart. He's just so kind. And ultimately Wesley is able to bust him by choking him out, knocking him out, and continues on. And then we get this great scene with Vizzini. Wesley catches up to Vizzini, and I'm gonna let you take over this part.
I love this scene. I do. I love this scene. Weirdly enough, when I was a kid, I was terrified of being poisoned by iocane powder, which does not exist. Iocane is not a real thing. Nope. But it's this whole idea of like, oh, this like tasteless, odorless poison that could just be put in your glass. And I don't know why, like, I latched on to that one bit. Yeah, this is really, really funny. Wallace Shawn, this is like, for someone who actually isn't in most of the film, he is so memorable.
It's so true.
And like, he just keeps talking, right? That's one of the things that I love about this whole thing, is that Wesley doesn't say very much. He just he lets Vizzini talk, and Vizzini, of course, believes that he's the most brilliant person in the world.
Dizzying intellect.
Yeah, and just can figure out everything. And he begins explaining, so they have this battle about the iocane powders, like which cup is the powder in, right? And his logic is absolutely ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. Like, listen to that speech sometimes, just like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Oh yeah, it starts off, it's so simple. All I have to do is divine from what I know of you. You are the sort of man who would put, sorry. Are you the sort of man who would put the poison into his own goblet or his enemies? Now, a clever man will put the poison into his own goblet because he would know that only a great fool would reach for what he was given. I am not a great fool, so I can clearly not choose the one in front of you. But then he keeps going, and this goes on forever.
And it does contain one of my favorite lines, which I always get wrong, but I fucking love it. You fell victim to one of the classic blunders. The most famous is never get involved in a land war in Asia, but only slightly less well known is this: never go up against a Sicilian when death is on the line. It's fucking great. I love it. I love the way that he delivers it.
He delivers it and then he dies.
And then he dies. It's great. It is amazing. Like, that whole scene is just, I think especially as an adult, because you can follow what he's saying a little bit better. That whole scene is just fucking hilarious. And then, of course, the punchline is ultimately Wesley being like, yeah, the poison was in both goblets. Like, I've been building up an immunity to iocane powder for years.
Yep.
It's just very clever. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the things that's great about Vizzini is it never occurs to him that there's a trick involved. This guy wouldn't think to do something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. He's not that smart.
Right.
Well, and the whole thing is that the way that he like fools Wesley is by being, oh my God, look over there, and he switches the goblets. And it's like, this is the dumbest, are you kidding me? This is like a cartoon,
Yes, exactly.
It's
so good.
Yeah, it's really clever. I just the whole, honestly, that whole sequence, starting with kind of Wesley following them and then the three fights and everything, is just one of my favorite bits in the film. Like, it's just so much fun, and very funny, and just like some great lines. It's just a really, really charming section of the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting too, though, because the movie really does have some, and the book does too. This comes from the book. But it does have these interesting political, it's not just this prince taking on this princess that he's going to marry. There's all these like political intrigues too, which totally makes sense, because especially when you're going into like sort of a Renaissance or medieval era, this is loosely set in, it feels like that's kind of all history is, like countries fighting against each other for land, for whatever. And so they play with that in this as well. And so it's, like I was saying, Vizzini gets Fezzik, and Inigo hires them to help him kidnap the princess. They think they're just kidnapping the princess, maybe for ransom or something. But Vizzini plans on murdering her because he wants, and framing the other country, framing Gilder, so that Gilder and Florin will go to war. Florin's the country they're in. So that those two will go into war. But of course, it's not just that simple, because the prince, Humperdinck, hired Vizzini in the first place. So the prince was the one that was trying to start the war.
Yeah, and then he concocts this whole thing with like murdering Buttercup on their wedding night,
Mm-hmm.
and blaming Gilder assassins. Like, yeah, it's very simple and straightforward, but it's very clever.
Yeah.
And it also means that the villains are the villains. And I really like that about Humperdinck and then Count Rugen. Chris Sarandon and
Christopher Guest.
Christopher Guest, yes. I think the first film I ever saw Christopher Guest in. I did not know who Christopher Guest was at this time.
Yep.
They're just so delightfully evil. It's just like, oh yeah, you're just bad. Like, you're evil in so many different ways.
Yeah.
I do want to say something about Buttercup, though, who is kind of, in some ways she has what could be a very thankless role, which is, she's being kidnapped, she's being sold in marriage. She can't be terribly active. And one of the places that I really like is when her and, who at the time is the Dread Pirate Roberts, right? They have this argument about like faithfulness and everything. And what we figure out is that obviously this is Wesley. Like, it's pretty obvious to the audience, but she doesn't know that it's Wesley. and they're having this argument about faithfulness, and she is like, the part of this whole thing is that she has been faithful. She's been sold in marriage, not her fault. But she's like, when she found out that Wesley was dead, had been like, his ship had been invaded and he had been killed, she like says, I died that day. There's this whole thing about like this true love that she has kept and has kept faith with the entire time, and then she fucking shoves him down a hill.
Yeah.
And then realizes, oh my God, that was Wesley, and then flings herself down the hill herself.
What I love, before we go down the hill, what I
Yeah.
love in the way that she delivers that line, "I died that day," is you really feel that. And this is one of the things I think that makes this movie so wonderful, is that even when, like, even in the middle of all this funny, all these funny things, and it goes right from this really poignant, tender moment to just a hilarity in a fire swamp. But I really love how she's totally serious, and she delivers that line with so much actual real emotion that you feel it, and it's not played for laughs. It's not anything silly. It really is, and that's, I think, part of why this movie's so good. And like the love is real. It's there, and I just I love that.
And it's what convinces Wesley that she's telling the truth, that this isn't like, she's not playing for anything. It's just like, no, you killed my one true love, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what convinces him that, like, oh yeah, she does actually love you.
Yeah. And so then she pushes him down the hill. He screams, "As you wish," which is how she knows that it's him.
Mm-hmm.
And then she tumbles down the hill after him, and of course, off in the distance, Humperdinck and Rugen had been following them, and oh no, they disappeared.
I loved that line. It's just like, they just vanished. She's like, this is obviously a very clever man. Like, just like, they both fell down a hill.
Yep.
Into a ravine.
And then that hill would be, I used to roll down hills when I was a kid. That hill is deadly. So
yeah, that's not a hill you really want to roll down. Yeah.
So yeah, but then they end up in the fire swamp, and they're trying to hide from Humperdinck and the soldiers. I love how the entire Florin army is like 8 guys. But that's another one of those things where it's like, it gets the point across. You don't need to see hundreds and hundreds of troops to understand, like, this is what's, the army is coming after them. So then of course we have some adventures in the fire swamp with they're like geysers of fire.
Yeah.
There's quicksand. This instilled my terror of quicksand. I was convinced as a child, between this and Looney Tunes, I was convinced as a child that I was going to end up in quicksand at some point in my life.
You'd have to say that films in particular really do reinforce the idea that quicksand is a much bigger threat than it actually is.
Yes.
Because there's so many films and stories that involve quicksand, people falling into quicksand, and the idea of quicksand is in fact frightening, but it's not that common.
Right.
And it's also not like, there's also this whole thing about, like, if you fall to quicksand, you're dead, you're gonna die horribly, like drowned in sand. It's like, that's not how it works. Quicksand, we were very much convinced that one of the top threats to ourselves in our lives was going to be quicksand.
Yeah, well, because like in every movie you're walking, including this one, you're walking along, and then all of a sudden you get scooped up in, and there's nothing you can do about it.
The other one is open manhole covers. That's something that happens quite a lot. You just fall. Just people like vanish from the streets.
So true. Oh, so true. So anyway, and then of course we have the ROUSs, which are the rodents of unusual size, which
I love.
Sorry, go ahead.
It has one of the best like punchlines too. Again, just like, rodents of unusual size, I don't believe they exist. He gets hit with one
immediately. Yeah, so they are these giant rats basically that were played by little people in costumes, And Rob Reiner, like this is one of those things where you really should listen to the audio commentary on this scene because it's really funny listening to Rob Reiner talk about this because they filmed in London. And so all the people that they used, well, the couple of people, because they didn't have tons of them, but the couple of people that they used in this scene, they're British. And so you have these like British people in these rat costumes going like, Mr. Reiner, do you want me to do this? And it's just so funny. I like to picture that. And it's also, as I was watching it last night, I was thinking about how much I miss this type of filmmaking where they would put people in costumes. Nowadays, if they were going to make The Princess Bride now, probably Fezzik would be played by a normal sized person that was just, using mocap, was made to look like a giant. And the rodents of unusual size would be CGI. They wouldn't be real people, And
sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
I was just because it contributes, the fact that these are all practical effects, these are all real people, etc. It contributes to that sensation of this being a tactile, lived-in world. Like It's like, do the rodents of unusual size look like actual gigantic rats? No, not really. They look kind of weird fairy tale rat things, right?
It looks sort of like paper mache.
Yeah, like I actually thought watching the film, I actually thought that they were like Muppets, like that Jim Henson had done some work on the film or something like that. That was the kind of like, and that would make sense. But the use of those kinds of practical effects, real people, like real people physically interacting with each other in different ways, do give this more of like a gritty and a more tactile feel, and a more, in a certain sense, more realistic to the world to a certain degree. Like it doesn't feel slick. It feels like, no, this is an actual thing that catches on fire, right?
Yeah. Oh, there's another, sorry, I'm basically just repeating all the stuff that was said in the audio commentary, but there's another funny story about this scene with from Bill Goldman, who he's like, I wrote in the book that Buttercup's dress catches on fire in the fire swamp. I wrote 7 drafts of the script in which Buttercup's dress catches on fire in the fire swamp. And then he says, as soon as they were filming it and her dress catches on fire, he screamed, "Oh no, her dress is on fire," and ruined the take. So this is really funny.
I like that.
Oh man. Yeah, there's some great stories. Seriously, listen to the audio commentary. It's great. Anyway, let's talk about Miracle Max and his wife.
Let's. Billy Crystal and Carol Kane. Just, I mean, again, it's one of those, it's kind of like Gene Hackman in Young Frankenstein, where the cameo just like steals the show, basically.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Billy Crystal is hilarious. First of all, he's unrecognizable. Like, if you didn't know it was Billy Crystal, you might not realize it was him, except for the voice. The voice is very recognizable.
Yeah.
Same thing
with Carol Kane. Yeah.
I love these characters because they're essential, right? They're like, they're there to bring Wesley back to life because we got to get Wesley alive again.
Right.
But the whole debate over it is just like, oh no, I don't believe you. Like, you probably lost a bet to him. And and he didn't pay up and all of that shit. Like, it's so funny. And then her storming and screaming, "Liar!"
Quiet witch. I'm not a witch, I'm your wife.
Humperdinck. It's just it's so funny and so like very much in keeping with the story and everything. And then being like, oh, it's for true love. Like, how dare you not help these people when it's for true love?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, like that's another one of the things that makes this storytelling so smart and so multi-level. Like, kids can just enjoy the silliness of the character. Grown-ups can actually understand, oh yeah, he's got this grudge against Humperdinck because he was fired and wrongly, and it really, like, it bruised his ego. Like, he's probably never been the same,
Mhm.
and this has caused problems in his home life with his wife. Like, and now he's just kind of this bitter guy. And yeah, and he's just trying to, like, when they want him to do this healing, he wants money for it, but his wife is just like, come on. And I love them so much.
It just, and one of the last lines, just like, bye bye boys, have fun storming the castle.
Think it'll work? It would take a miracle.
It's great.
Yes.
It's great. Yeah, there's like, that's the thing. This whole film is peopled with those kinds of roles, cameos, secondary characters. It fleshes it out so well, and you've got the central story, but you recognize these. Like, I've read books where these characters show up. And I think that's what's so delightful about it, what's so universal about it, and why this film has lasted as long as it has and been such a major cultural touchstone, is because it's a fairy tale. You just like, it's like Sleeping Beauty or Snow White, where you just keep on coming back to these characters in this story, and it's fun. It's funny.
Yeah. And ultimately, so much of that all coalesces at the castle when they finally arrive, and Inigo finally gets to face the six-fingered man.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that the story is about Wesley and Buttercup, but it's not. It's about all of them. And this is such a huge moment for Inigo too, because he's been waiting for this for 20 years, since his father was murdered. And I love, this is another place where the emotions, the sentiment that from the character is real and honest and sincere. And even though the scene around it is funny, when he keeps repeating over and over again the line that he has been preparing to say for so many years, you really feel it from him. You really feel it. And then you had a good comment in the show notes too.
Yeah,
about this.
I think that scene, that final duel between Inigo and Count
Rugen.
What's his name? Rugen. I kept wanting to say Reuven, which is close to the name of my dog. But yeah, Count Rugen.
Your dog would never.
My dog would never. No. But yeah, that scene is one of the most serious scenes in the film, actually, and it's been built up to this and everything. But that fight, you feel the emotion behind it. And I know that in an interview with Mandy Patinkin, he talked about his father having recently passed away from cancer, and like when he was making this film, and that he kind of drew on the emotions from that, of like his anger at this disease that had taken his father away from him, and that was what he was kind of communicate, that it was actually very cathartic for him to communicate that through this character of like fighting, getting to physically fight, right, the thing that murdered his father. And particularly that line, and I think it's again one of the best lines, and not humorous, but just so well delivered and brilliant, is that line, Rugen says, "I'll give you anything you want," and Inigo says, "I want my father back, you son of a bitch." It's just moving, like it almost chokes me up, and it's the way that Patinkin delivers it, and that kind of emotion that we have in the back of the character. And again, I think that as in the film as a whole, that's another thing that I think makes it work as well as it does, because the actors believe in what they're saying. Like they are these characters, and you do feel for them. Like Wesley and Buttercup, yeah, this is the great love story, right? This is like, true love is going to survive everything. And you absolutely believe it. Like it comes through in the performances. One of the things that we've talked about before with comedy is that if the actors really believe in the characters and believe in what they're saying, it's funnier, and it's also more human. And I think that that's one of the things that comes through in this that doesn't come through in some satires or parodies, which are much more superficial. These actors are these characters. They're portraying these characters. These are real people in this world that they inhabit. And they don't think they're funny. They don't think they're ridiculous. and there's just something very realistic underlying all of it. And I think that we get that a lot, particularly in that scene with Inigo and Rugen.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that scene. This is the other great sword fight in this movie. And it really, this time the stakes are so different, because the first time we saw Inigo fighting, it was against Wesley, who that was more for play. Like, they weren't really trying to hurt each other. In this case, these are two men that are trying to kill each other. And there are some funny things, like even initially before the fight actually starts, when Inigo delivers his line to Rugen, and you think, oh, here we go, this is gonna happen, and then Rugen just turns around and runs away. And
which, you know what, fair.
Yeah.
Like, if I just like, oh, now you must fight me, it's just like, no.
Right. But also it's like, it shows what a coward Rugen is, because he's been like this big villain the whole time, and as soon as he's actually faced with somebody who could hurt him, he's out. He's not gonna stand there and take that. So props to Christopher Guest as like a great kind of, he's that secondary sort of evil vizier character. He's the one he's created a machine because he's fascinated by the concept of pain, like all of those, like, it's so, again, so quintessential and just quite funny, and he plays it so well. He is the queer-coded Disney villain character in this film. Just like, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. Like, all of those things that like he filters into that is just very entertaining and fun to watch. I was doing some just research last night, show prep stuff. I do that sometimes. And I fell upon a Reddit page that was all people asking, like, was I the only person that thought there was maybe something between Rugen and Humperdinck? And everyone's like, no, you weren't the only person that thought that. It's so obvious.
Oh yeah, no, it's intentionally there.
Yes,
like,
they look at each other so longingly. It's
like they're both very queer-coded villains. Like, it's very much leaning into that. We could talk about the issues of homophobia. They're not villains
because they're gay. That's not what we're saying.
But they are, like, it does go into those elements of like queer coding villainous characters, and like the relationship to perversity, particularly when it comes to Rugen, and kind of using that. So you could argue about issues of homophobia within this context, but it's not, I don't think it's so prevalent that it's really a problem, to be honest. But yeah, absolutely. Those two are like, and Humperdinck himself is not particularly interested in women. He's interested in power.
Yeah.
Right. He's interested in, like, he's going to kill Buttercup. He's not interested in being married to her. Or anything, and she's
considered the most beautiful woman in the land. So he's marrying the most beautiful woman only to then immediately murder her. So.
Yeah, and the whole thing is like, and for him particularly, it's about power, and it's about power over other people. It doesn't even really have anything to do with sexuality one way or the other. It's just like, no, I want the he's typed as a hunter. They talk about him as being a hunter. He wants the kind of trophy to put on his mantelpiece.
Yeah.
So she's the most beautiful. He could marry anybody, but he's like, oh, she's the most beautiful woman in the land, and of course I must marry her and kind of mount her and put her on my shelf. As it were. So yeah, but they're definitely, both of them are definitely queer-coded characters. Rugen more so than Humperdinck.
Yeah, definitely. And it's very satisfying when Inigo wins that fight. After he's bleeding, he's been stabbed. It seems like he's gonna die.
He's been and that's a moment, like, you never think that Wesley's not gonna die, but there is a moment where you're like, oh my god, is Inigo gonna die? Like, or is that because he's a secondary character, he can. And he's not protected by the narrative, as it were. But watch, they just like, it's heartbreaking. And particularly when Rugen is just like, oh, this is really sad. Like, you've been waiting for 20 years to do this, and you just failed at the last hurdle, basically.
Yeah.
And then Inigo gets up and like, yes.
And it
keeps
that
on fighting.
And it is that fairy tale like heroic moment that he gets to jump up, and even though he's got he's holding pressure over his own wound so he doesn't bleed out, and he's able to just keep going, which is such a movie like fairy tale thing, and it works. It's so good.
And he doesn't die either. He doesn't
die.
He could, because we could have had the, he kills the villain and then he collapses on the floor or whatever.
Right.
But no, he
like
doesn't.
His work is done, but no, he gets to live.
In fact, he has a whole thing about like, oh, I've been doing this for 20 years. I wonder now what should I do next? I don't know.
Well, and I love how the whole thing for Wesley, he went off, he was a sailor and ends up getting like his ship gets taken over by this dread pirate Roberts. And so for a long time, he's sort of captive to this guy. He tells the story to Buttercup. He's sort of captive to this guy who eventually decides, you know what, I could retire, but I don't want to, like, the name is the thing. And this is sort of what Ed was talking about in Our Flag Means Death.
I was gonna say, like, I don't know. I would like to ask David Jenkins, but I kind of would be like, so how much of The Princess Bride is filtering into all of this?
Right.
Like, because we've got like a princess who then is no longer a princess and like all sorts of things.
Yeah, exactly.
Pirate who wants to retire.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the whole thing. So eventually that dread pirate Roberts retired and passed the mantle over to Wesley, who becomes this pirate. He's very, he continues to be this fearsome pirate. And so now he has the opportunity to pass that on because he's reunited with his love and he can go and live his life. And so now for Inigo, who has accomplished the one thing that he's been devoting his life to, he's kind of free to do whatever. And so I love that Wesley's like, hey, you would make a wonderful dread pirate Roberts.
I also love that Inigo gets kind of the climactic fight, because we don't get the climactic fight with Wesley and Humperdinck, right? What we get is a battle of words and bluffing, because Humperdinck even says like, I knew it. I knew
he was bluffing.
and it's great because we, the audience, are just like, we know he can barely stand. Like,
Wesley's still coming back
fight.
From being mostly dead.
Yeah, he can't fight. So he has to basically convince Humperdinck, I can kill you or I can destroy you, right? And it is a better idea for you to surrender to me. And it's sort of a repeat of the Vizzini incident where he kind of basically just lets him convince himself, essentially. And it works. And I do like that Humperdinck even gets that line of like, I knew it, I knew you were bluffing, I knew it. Damn.
Yes. It's so great. But I even love, before that, I love Wesley when the two of them are they're basically talking through the chess match. They're talking through, well, okay, I'm going to do this and then you're going to do that. And so Wesley's saying like, first I'll remove your, I'll cut off, I don't have it in front of me. But anyway, he's going through all the things he's going to do. And then Humperdinck starts finishing it for him. I know. And then my ears. And Wesley's like, no, your ears you'll keep. And here's why. And he basically is just like, that way no matter where you go, you'll always have to hear the sounds of children screaming in the horror of seeing your hideousness.
And then he manages to he says like, well, I don't believe you.
Right.
And then he stands up and like points his sword at him and everything. And then as soon as Humperdinck like surrenders and Buttercup ties him up, Wesley just collapses.
Yeah.
he can't even take a step.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, and Humperdinck, who is he's all about power and he's vain and all of those things, like all these threats, like what Wesley is threatening to do to him. Yeah, that would be the worst because he, it's worse than a battle to the death. So
yep.
Yeah, that's great. And so then Humperdinck is tied up, he's captured, and Fezzik shows up with horses, and
I love that, like, oh, I just happened upon the stables and look, 4 white horses.
and I thought there are 4 of us if we find the lady. Hi, lady.
Like, hi, lady. So sweet.
Yeah. Well, and then I love too where Inigo's like, oh, Fezzik, you did something right. It's like Fezzik's done a lot of right things the whole time. Everyone just tells him that he's dumb all the time. I love Fezzik. And then they go off and they live happily ever after.
And we do finally get the kiss.
And we
Perfect kiss.
Yes. In all the world, there's been what? 2, 3 perfect kisses?
Five perfect kisses, and this one leaves them all behind. Yeah. As an aside, I really do think that like there's more than a little bit of the Princess Bride in Our Flag Means Stuff.
I think that is very true.
They just made it really, really gay.
Uh-huh.
And that's what happened.
Yes. Yeah. Oh man, it's so good. So good. Oh, I also like sorry, I want to jump back to Buttercup just for a second. I know we're kind of running long now, but I want to jump back to Buttercup for just a second for a couple of things. First of all, one of the things I enjoy is that she doesn't get out of the marriage by her new husband being killed, so now she's a widow. She never said I do. It wasn't a legal marriage, and Wesley points it out to her like, no, it's not legal. You're not legally married. So I like that. And I think there are just some things in general, like you were talking about Buttercup getting to be her own person, getting to do a lot with a role that normally would be a very passive role. But I also think too, just the way that she is treated, like I think there's some very smart things about the way that she's written and presented, because things like when she has agreed to marry Humperdinck and they're having that thing in the courtyard of the palace, and this woman boos her, and it's just like, your love still lives, boo, I can't believe you would do this to him. Like she's treated like by these people, she's treated like she's the problem when she's this poor woman that's been caught up in this situation. And like all of this is out of her control. She has no autonomy over her own life. And I like, not, I don't love that for her, but I like the way that is captured, where the townspeople, they're so caught up in Humperdinck's, whatever it is, that they vilify the girl for choosing the prince instead of the man that she supposes to love,
Well, but she even is like, she's so dedicated to us that she's like, she tells Humperdinck, I'm not gonna marry you.
Yeah.
If you try to marry me, I'm gonna kill myself. Like she even threatens you. She's like, all right, I had to marry him. Well, I'm gonna kill myself.
Yeah. I'm gonna kill myself tonight in our wedding chamber.
Yeah, so there is this like this consistency of her trying to take as much autonomy as she has. She regularly attempts to escape from the people who have kidnapped her. Like she flings herself off of the ship.
Yeah.
As soon as she gets an opportunity, she shoves the dread pirate Roberts down a hill. So like over and over and over again, she's like, and then she's finally, all right, if you will spare Wesley, I'll go back with you.
Yeah.
And so it's there is those elements of like the self-sacrifice of the princess, etc. But she does consistently take her autonomy and say, like, I'm not going to marry a man I don't love. I'm not going to, abandon the man that I do. I am not going to just like, be a damsel in distress the entire time. I'm actually going to try to do something within my power.
Yes. Exactly. All right. Any other thoughts?
It is a wonderful film. I say to everybody, if you've not seen it recently, especially if you've not seen it as like an adult, watch it. It's on Hulu now, and is just very worth revisiting. Is so much fun. So many great lines that I still use in my day-to-day life without even thinking about where they came from.
It's so true.
It holds up. Like that's the thing. There's so many films that are just like, that are products of their time or whatever. And this one just still holds up. It's universal in so many ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's great. It's funny. It's sweet. It's charming, and it's just a fun movie.
Yep, highly recommend it. I'm gonna get the next Criterion sale. This is gonna be on my list.
Nice. Yeah, it definitely should. I bought it years ago, and it's the Criterion edition is so cute because it looks like a storybook. It's really cute. I like it. All right. Well, that's going to wrap things up for this week. Next week, we will be discussing the movie Roxanne, starring Steve Martin, which is an adaptation of Cyrano de Bergerac. So come back for that. And in the meantime, there's lots of places you can find us and stuff. So first of all, we want to thank our patrons for helping keep the show going. They are Abby, Audra, Brian, Connor, Estefania, Ferdinand, Heather, James, Judy, Carriotta, Matt, Michelle, MK, Monty, Nanina, Noel, Robert, Stephen, Sharon. If you would like to join them and become a patron too and help keep the show ad-free and all that stuff, you can go to our Patreon, patreon.com/citizendame. And there you get access to our episodes early. You get bonus episodes, all kinds of things. We are in the midst of an Alfred Hitchcock Presents bonus series going through all of the Alfred Hitchcock directed episodes of that series. And for anybody who's been a little bit like, what's going on? We are caught up now. So all episodes are available on the Patreon, and we'll have a new one coming this next week. Yeah. There's also other ways that you can support us. You can go to our Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/citizendame. And of course, you can read our work. I have a review coming next week of the new A24 movie Friendship, which is so weird and very, very funny. Anyway, that will be on our website, citizendamepod.com. If you want to contact us, you can email us, citizendamepod@gmail.com, and you can find us on social media. On Instagram and Blue Sky, we're at Citizen Dame Pod, and on Letterboxd, we are a Letterboxd HQ at Citizen Dame. You can, of course, also find us individually. Lauren, where are you?
I am on Letterboxd and Instagram at LH Business.
And I am on Instagram, Letterboxd, and Blue Sky at Karen M. Peterson. And that is it. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great week.
Bye.
Good heavens. Are you still trying to win? You've got an overdeveloped sense of vengeance. It's going to get you into trouble someday.
My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Hello. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Hello! My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Stop saying that! Oh. Hello! My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die! Now! Offer me money. Yes. Power to promise me that. All that I have and more. Please. Offer me everything I ask for. Anything you want. I want my father back, you son of a bitch.